Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we diving deep into the life of one of the most complex and controversial figures in American history, Robert E. Lee. Was he a brilliant military strategist, a reluctant traitor, or something else entirely? To understand the man, we have to go back to the beginning. Robert Edward Lee was born on January 19, 1807, at Stratford Hall Plantation in Virginia. And let me tell you, his family tree was basically a who's who of early America. His father was Light Horse Harry Lee, a Revolutionary War hero and governor of Virginia. His wife, Mary Custis, was the great-granddaughter of Martha Washington. From birth, Lee was steeped in a tradition of honor, duty, and service to his country. He seemed destined for greatness. Following in his father's footsteps, Lee attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. This is where his legend really begins. He wasn't just a good student, he was exceptional. He graduated second in his class in 1829 without a single demerit, which is an almost unheard of achievement. It spoke volumes about his discipline and character. For the next 30 years, he served as a brilliant officer in the U.S. Army. He was an engineer, distinguishing himself in the Mexican-American War, where his scouting and strategic advice were crucial for American victories. He even served as the superintendent of West Point, shaping the next generation of military leaders, many of whom would later fight with and against him. By 1861, America was on the brink of collapse. The nation was tearing itself apart over the issues of slavery and states' rights. Abraham Lincoln, newly elected, knew he needed the best military minds to preserve the Union. He offered Robert E. Lee command of the entire Union Army. This was the moment of truth for Lee. Here was the pinnacle of a career, the ultimate post for a man who had dedicated his life to the United States Army. It was a staggering offer, but Lee turned it down. Just 2 days after the offer, his home state of Virginia seceded from the Union. For Lee, the choice was agonizing. He personally opposed secession, calling it a revolution and an act of anarchy. He also expressed a moral opposition to slavery, which he called a moral and political evil. However, his loyalty to Virginia, his home, his country as he called it, was stronger. He famously wrote, "I cannot raise my hand against my birthplace, my relatives, my children." So, he resigned his commission from the U.S. Army and offered his services to the newly formed Confederate States of America. It was a decision that would define his legacy forever. As commander of the Army of Northern Virginia, Lee quickly proved himself to be a military genius. His battlefield tactics are still studied today. He was audacious, a master of risk and deception. Time and again, he faced much larger Union armies and through sheer tactical brilliance, defeated them. Battles like the 7 Days Battles, Second Manassas, Fredericksburg, and Chancellorsville became legendary. At Chancellorsville, he divided his smaller force in the face of a much larger enemy, a move that defied military convention and achieved what many consider his most brilliant victory. He inspired incredible devotion in his men, who simply called him Marse Robert. They would follow him anywhere, enduring hardship and starvation, all for the man they believed was invincible. But even a genius can't win against overwhelming odds forever. The turning point of the war came in July 1863 in a small Pennsylvania town called Gettysburg. Lee, emboldened by his string of victories, invaded the North for a second time, hoping to force a decisive battle that would end the war. For 3 brutal days, the two armies clashed in what would become the bloodiest battle in American history. The final desperate Confederate assault, known as Pickett's Charge, was a catastrophic failure. Lee's army was shattered. As the survivors stumbled back, Lee rode out to meet them, famously saying, "It is all my fault. It is I who have lost this fight." He took full responsibility, a rare quality in any leader. Gettysburg was a blow from which the Confederacy would never truly recover. The final years of the war were a slow, grinding descent. Lee found himself facing a new kind of opponent in Ulysses S. Grant. Unlike previous Union generals who retreated after a defeat, Grant just kept coming. He was a bulldog. The Overland Campaign of 1864 was a brutal, relentless series of battles. Grant knew the Union could replace its losses, while the Confederacy could not. It became a war of attrition. Lee was forced into a defensive struggle, culminating in the long, grueling siege of Petersburg. His army, starving and depleted, held on for nearly 10 months, but the end was inevitable. On April 9, 1865, in a small house in the village of Appomattox Courthouse, Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. The meeting between these two men was a powerful moment. Grant, respecting the man who had been his formidable adversary, offered generous terms of surrender. He allowed the Confederate soldiers to keep their horses and sidearms and return home, an act of grace that was crucial for starting the long, painful process of national healing. For Lee, the surrender was the end of his military career and the cause he had chosen to defend. After the war, Lee could have faded into obscurity or fled the country like some other Confederate leaders. Instead, he chose a different path. He accepted the presidency of Washington College in Lexington, Virginia, which was a small, struggling school. He believed that education was the key to rebuilding the South and reconciling the nation. He urged his fellow Southerners to accept the outcome of the war, become good citizens of the United States again, and work toward a peaceful future. He told a Confederate mother who harbored bitterness, "Madam, do not train up your children in hostility to the government of the United States. Forget your animosities and make your sons Americans." He dedicated his final years to this mission of reconciliation, transforming the small college into a prestigious institution, now known as Washington and Lee University. Robert E. Lee passed away on October 12, 1870, at the age of 63. His death was mourned throughout the South and even in parts of the North. In the decades that followed, his image was transformed. He became a central figure in the Lost Cause narrative, which romanticized the Confederacy and downplayed the central role of slavery in the Civil War. He was portrayed as a noble, tragic hero, a Christian gentleman who fought honorably for a doomed cause. This idealized version of Lee became a powerful symbol, particularly in the South. But in recent years, that legacy has been heavily re-examined. We can't ignore the fact that for all his personal virtues, Lee fought to preserve a system built on the brutal enslavement of millions of people. He was a slave owner himself, and his views on race, while perhaps complex for his time, were far from enlightened by today's standards. This has led to intense debates over monuments and memorials dedicated to him. Is it possible to admire his military skill and personal character while condemning the cause for which he fought? And that's the central paradox of Robert E. Lee. He was a man of profound contradictions, a brilliant U.S. Army officer who became its most formidable enemy, a man who called slavery an evil yet fought to uphold it, a symbol of Southern rebellion who, after the war, became a powerful voice for national reconciliation. His story isn't a simple one of good versus evil. It's a deeply human story, filled with difficult choices, conflicting loyalties, and a legacy that continues to challenge how we think about our own history. He forces us to confront the uncomfortable complexities of the past, and that's why, more than 150 years after his death, we are still talking about him. What are your thoughts on Robert E. Lee? Let me know down in the comments. It's a tough subject, but an important one to discuss. Thanks so much for watching, and if you found this interesting, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next one.